Thom Hartmann Program. I'm Alex Lawson, filling in for Thom, who is on location, working on a documentary on the effects of climate change. And there is just a lot of news this week and today, and I've been doing my best to try to wrap my head around it. And so I'm really happy to be joined by phone with our next guest, Bernard E. Thompson, who is a retired attorney, a member of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, and had a 22-year career with the FBI. Bernard, thank you so much for joining us on the Thom Hartmann Program.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
So I don't even know where to start with this story. Obviously, the story being the firing of the head of the FBI, James Comey, by Donald Trump. There's a lot of wrinkles, and you know, just now he's changed it again and said he was going to fire Comey regardless of the recommendation from the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General. And there's just so many wrinkles of this. I'd like just first, from your perspective, your sense of what happened and just how you saw it happening.
Well, it's ironic that you would ask it that way, because I had just sent an email last night to a close friend who I've known for some 60 years and said, of all of the crazy things that have been happening in our world these days, I could never have seen something like this coming. Now, on the one hand, it was clear that there was a lot of tension between the White House and the FBI simply as a result of the ongoing investigations, but the FBI not apparently lifting to a higher level the priority that our president apparently wanted on the focus or the investigation of the leaks that were supposedly taking place from day to day. And since some people took the position, many people took the position that the priority should have been on the Russian affair, whatever that means, all that captures, as opposed to the various leaks that came out of the White House, because throughout the history of our republic, it appears as though leaks have always taken place simply because that is the way the United States is allowed to govern with transparency, even if it doesn't want to in that White House, if that makes sense to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the tension that was taking place, it was interesting that, and many of my friends call me over the past several months and say, look, you're an attorney. How do you square this business of all of the transgressions that apparently took place by Hillary Clinton and her friends, and I'm including her aide, Huma Abedin, and the emails that were running through her computer that she was sharing with former Congressman Anthony Weiner. They said, how do you square all of the transgressions that Director Comey laid out in his July 2016 analysis with the conclusion that, therefore, or in spite of all of these things, no indictment, no criminal investigation will continue, and there'll be no additional charges? And I said, the only thing that I can tell you is that, and I've not read those statutes that he was referring to that she may or may not have violated, but it made it clear that she might have violated a number of them. But the question came down to, is that one of those statutes that requires specific intent in order for them to criminalize your actions? And because some things are so clear-cut that they require no intent, and other things, if you run a light, you don't have to have intended to run the light, but the violation stands nevertheless. So the question that was in my mind and like minds was whether or not she simply didn't rise to the level of specific intent required by the statute. And you may recall that Director Comey did say on several occasions that she it did not appear that she intended to do anything criminal. And for that reason, she was given a pass. But a number of people, myself included, wondered aloud how, with the number of transgressions, you could nevertheless reach that conclusion. But be that as it may, then we moved on to the October surprise. And that was probably the most bewildering moment, because the way I've heard it explained by Director Comey in news media is that he took the position that he was damned if he did and damned if he didn't. And he said that, and I've read particularly articles from the Washington Post, the Washington Times, and the New York Times. Those are my three daily news readers. I've read articles that suggested, and it seemed fairly clear-cut, that as far as the FBI was concerned, the actions by the Russians. I'm sorry. I fast-forwarded.
Mm-hmm.
Still dealing with the October. I fast-forwarded.
Although we are running a little bit tight on time, so we should speed up in the course of history so that we get to the now.
Okay, so I'll skip over the letter because the impact of that October letter to Congress still has sway today, obviously.
Yeah, massive.
Who believe that we would never be in this situation we're in now, but for the intervention by the Bureau through the letter that he sent to Congress. And all I will say about that is that if there was a letter that identified that we were investigating Hillary Clinton, the big question that pops up in many people's minds is why did the Bureau not similarly send a letter to Congress saying, oh, and by the way, we're investigating Russian intervention, Russian hacking, and any interaction between the Trump campaign and the possible Russian intervention. So that seemed a little strange to me. So then when we get all the way up to the current time, the thing that's the strangest about this is, from everything I've been able to gather, the president was stewing in his juices over Comey's day-to-day arrogance and things like that, that he just thought Comey was thinking that Comey was the president. And it just did not sit well with the president. And he apparently had been looking for a way to pull off this termination of Comey, but in a way that made sense, or at least plausibly made sense. And so when he does this action on Tuesday, there are several bizarre things that just don't make sense anyway, and that's the timing of it in general, and the notion that he would send his former security chief from New York, who now works on his staff, that the president would send him over to the FBI headquarters to deliver the letter without knowing that his FBI director was in Los Angeles. A phone call could have determined that. And, I mean, if he really felt desperate about sending it right away, he could have had it sent to him in California. So the timing of that just smacks of poor judgment, but that's the president's call. I would simply say to you that the media has made it clear that the final decision that was made by President Trump was made approximately an hour before anybody got wind of it, and that includes his Sean Spicer and his communications team, and that it appeared as though the White House was in a bit of an uproar simply because there was never any time for the communications people to prepare an analysis of what had happened so that they could present it in a way that made sense to the public when the action had been taken. And
Bernard, let me ask you two points on, because I agree with this timeline you set out, that is basically what happened. But from your perspective, and having worked at the FBI, the president firing the head of the FBI, who's the head of, there are ongoing investigations into the Russia affair and everything that encompasses, as you said. And, you know, I think that I see it as like, oh, okay, well, I think it's pretty clear that he did it to obstruct an investigation, which would be illegal and an impeachable offense. I think that that, to me, is the most obvious explanation. But I'm not going to ask you to comment on that one, just on the methodology that the president used. And how do you feel rank and file FBI agents will react to that? It's A, the fact that James Comey was at an FBI gathering and, you know, surrounded by agents. He was working and he learned about it when it flashed on the television behind him. That smacks of disrespect at the highest level. You know, maybe incompetence that they just didn't make a phone call, but it also, to me, seems like it could just be a high level of disrespect. And then there's a sort of disrespect or even bullying sort of aspect to sending a bodyguard over to deliver this letter. And then third, the second paragraph in the letter that he actually sent, where he stated that Director Comey, he thanked Director Comey for 3 times in what the president says, verifying that the president was not under investigation, which is a very bizarre thing to put in that letter, because his whole excuse is that it's not about the investigation. But all of those together seem to me that they would smack rank and file FBI agents as incredibly disrespectful, not only of James Comey, but of the entire institution that is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me take the last point first. Thomas O'Connor, who is currently the president of the FBI Agents Association, that's the On-Board Agents Association, was interviewed yesterday. I believe it was by NPR, and I simply read an excerpt that was online. It may have been the entire conversation, because O'Connor said that he was riding a bike, riding in part of a stream of bicycles going up to Boston, I believe it is, in connection with Law Enforcement Memorial Week. And one of the things that Tom O'Connor, went on to say was that the rank and file members had told him over and over that they believe that Director Comey and the FBI will continue to work towards upholding the law and the Constitution today, tomorrow, and into the future. And then there were others, even if you caught today's congressional hearings, Andy McCabe said today that he had heard that White House officials had claimed that the FBI was in turmoil and that the agents would be reacting favorably to the termination and this, that, the other. And Mr. McCabe said he absolutely did not believe that, and that people had, for the most part, supported. He said almost everybody he talked to supported Director Comey in what he was doing. And now I'll take the position that both he and I take, and that is that as far as we know, the director of the FBI, James Comey, was a man of high integrity, and he believed in honesty, and he believed that when the FBI made an investigation, conducted an investigation, the investigation went wherever the evidence took them, and there was no consideration of no respecter of person. I'll put it like that. It didn't matter what party you belonged to. It didn't matter what your affiliations were or who your friends were. If there was evidence that you had done something wrong, the FBI is going to go after you. We've always done it that way, and we will continue to do it that way. And
because nobody is above the law.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this level of disrespect, I have never. Let me just say categorically that, in my mind, having now been through whatever means, having been elected as the President of the United States, I believe, and Noble takes the same position, that the goal of the White House and the federal agencies, all federal institutions, should be to find ways to make more strategic decisions that'll build more confidence in the government. And I don't think that these actions are reaching that goal. In fact, regardless of a person's political stripe, I simply take the position, and I've been watching presidents since Dwight D. Eisenhower, and I note that his presidency took place throughout my entire elementary school career, from 1952 to 1961.
Bernard, in the last 30 seconds here, just to want to let you finish your point.
Okay. I would simply say that any president who's in that White House should take the position that he is the president of the entire United States and all its citizens, and that he should not be taking any action whatsoever that seeks and actually winds up dividing this country, but that he should be doing all that he can to unite this country into one great republic, which is what all of us should stand for.
Bernard Thompson, retired FBI agent, thank you so much for joining us on the Thom Hartmann Program.
Again, thank you for having me.
And we'll have more of this great program right after this.